like, what if we could take all of this, move it onto a Monday, make it much more focused on different themes for grade levels of what we want them to get out of it, and then Tuesday through Friday would be focused just on instructional time.
I'm just curious, in all your time in education and the work that you've done, like, do you think we are now currently like overvaluing information and maybe undervaluing experiences in education?
Watching the Mission Mondays come to life, I have seen students come to life. In your traditional school setting, you hear a lot of negativity with the Mission Mondays and what they're doing there. That culture with the students has completely changed. There's a lot of our seniors that talked about, I'm really going to miss this. I really miss what we did this year.
As a lifelong learner and being out there and learning and evolving with your community, with your students, with your peers as educators, I just see this as a win-win-win.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education podcast, powered by U Science. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education podcast. I'm Peter Hostrawser. We have Alli Dahl here and a guest. But Alli, before we get to our amazing guest, repeat guest, by the way, there's a little hint there. How you doing, Alli? What's up?
I'm doing well, and I have been so excited and waiting to record this episode. It's just one of those conversations that's like, we've had this guest on before, and the timing of it is really interesting for me because when we had this guest on the podcast, I had just embarked on chickens. And this guest was also just embarking on a new, very disruptive educational thing that we'll dive into. And I was just thinking about, like, man, the first year and a half of doing something, there's like so much of a learning curve. There's so much, like mistakes, so to speak, that get made, and you just kind of work through them. And like with my chickens, I'm very attentive with them, but there's just like things you don't know that are going to come up. Raising chickens, people say, is brutal because they just have like all these different things that can happen. But I feel like so much more well prepared to like deal with anything that comes my way with the chickens, and just kind of like it's like something as simple as like how to hold them or like how to care for them. Like if they get a little boo-boo and you're like, okay, it's not that big of a deal this time. But in the beginning, everything felt like really big. And so, right, like I'm sure our guest had some of that before this past year. And so now it's like, okay, it's summer. This thing has happened for a year. And so now we're going to kind of dive into it.
Yeah. This is where we have shifted the butts and seats a kind of mentality. And so I'll give a quick introduction to our guest here. Is Jason Walke. He's one of the more interesting stories in education right now because all this AI talk and, everybody's going on computers or everybody's arguing about phones and different things. He actually redesigned the structure of school time around experiences, relationships, and purpose. And this episode called the Mission Mondays, which we're going to dive into that. But it's not just about that. It's basically even more so about what happens when schools intentionally create a space for learning that AI can't do. So Jason Walke's with us. How are you doing, Jason? Thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you guys for having me back on. I am completely excited about discussing what this year has looked like, and it's great to be back on the podcast with you guys.
So let's go back for 1 year. Number one, reintroduce yourself, kind of let people know who you are, and you've had a few different leadership changes and won some awards, which I'm pretty happy about because when you see an educator who's really working at the core and doing things and not just talking about things, that I love it when people are recognized for that. But talk a little bit about like who you are, what district you're in, and then we'll dive into what happened over the last year.
Of course. So I work at a very small private school. Oldenburg Academy is the name of the school. We are high school, 9th through 12th grade. Between all four grades, we have a total of about 150 students. So We're very small. It's a Franciscan Catholic school, so that's faith gets tied into a lot of what we do as well, being a private school. That's I went from being just a full-time educator and work-based learning coordinator to now I added in what they call the director of academic innovation. And that is kind of where this Mission Monday falls in. And so that's with our Mission Mondays. I have been completely in charge of brainstorming ideas and helping execute those ideas for our students on these Mondays. And it has been quite the roller coaster ride this past year, but that's with that. It's been very exciting, and it did lead to I've been able to win a few awards. I was recently named our local Chamber of Commerce Educator of the Year, which was pretty exciting and humbling and completely unexpected. But that's it just goes with everything that we're doing. And it's not just me, it's a complete team effort, school effort to make this program succeed. And it has been fantastic to see it come alive.
You're very humble. We reference your work regularly, which is why we were so excited to hear, because you dropped at the end of the podcast like a year and a half ago, like, oh, we're gonna do this whole Mondays where school isn't school, kids are gonna go and do a mission, and it hadn't happened yet. Like, it was all ideation at that point. So I guess I want to kind of start with why Mission Mondays? How did that idea kind of even develop from when you were doing work-based learning to then implementing it? And what with your work and everything, why Mission Mondays?
So one of the biggest things with it was we were noticing just overall as a school, when we'd have our faculty meetings, some of the biggest issues that got discussed was schedule interruptions. We were always having a handful of students being pulled out of class to go on a field trip, or we would be doing a mass that day, or we would just various things going on that had to happen. And with that, it created less instructional time. That's when you're a small school. If you take out 20 or 30 kids for a field trip or something like that, now all of a sudden that is essentially an entire class or half of a class that you really can't do anything that day because they're gone on a field trip. So we kind of looked through the data and calculated those minutes with when things were being disrupted. And we got to looking at it and was like, what if we could take all of this, move it onto a Monday, make it much more focused on different themes for grade levels of what we want them to get out of it. And then Tuesday through Friday would be focused just on instructional time. I mean, of course, we do still have a few interruptions. You can't change the dates of standardized tests and things like that. So there's still a few days that happens. But overall, and that's as the data showed from this year, teachers are actually happier in that they felt like they were able to get further from an instructional standpoint than they were in the past with going Tuesday through Friday. We did adjust the school day a little bit. That's classes were a few minutes longer than they were in the past. Our school day was extended by about 10 minutes total to accommodate that, but that's with it. It was still pretty impressive that teachers were like, yeah, we did not fall back at all. We are actually ahead of where we have made it in years past. So that was kind of the main point that started pushing us into this direction.
I'm hearing happier educators, and we're not falling behind. We're actually ahead. That's pretty cool. My basic question here was, did it work? Like, what worked, and then what were the things that I'm sure there were problems and challenges. So going back to Mission Monday, let's is there like a global, hey, if I'm going to open up your school's website and see Mission Mondays, what is it to our listeners? And then if you can describe it in maybe a couple sentences, and then what as you implemented this, there was probably there's pushback, there's things that go well, but there's also things that, hey, we learned from this. So I know that's a ginormous question, but that's what I like to ask, ginormous questions.
Sure. So just first basic idea of Mission Monday. That's the idea behind it is it's getting students experiential learning. That's whether that is we bring guest speakers in that are experts in different fields to talk to students, whether that is we send them on different field trips to do some immersive learning activities, whether that is doing some community service, going through leadership retreats, um, doing some faith building retreats and different activities for spirituality purposes. That's all of that gets tied into those Mondays. Our main goal was each grade level always has something that they're doing on a Monday, and that's each grade level essentially is also doing something different. So like on one Monday, you may have freshmen going to a art museum. That's one of our main themes for freshmen is just fine arts, learning more about fine arts and what goes on there. So they go to a couple different museums. They had some guests come in. They got to see a Shakespeare play being performed at our school and some things like that to hit that theme. And then our sophomores, we focus on community service. So they are going to food pantries in the area. They are going to other nonprofit organizations and just learning about those and how to give back to their community and be hands-on with what they're doing to get that experience. Juniors, we kind of keep it as a history focus since with us in Indiana, all juniors are taking a U.S. history class. So we tie things into that. So they were able to go to a museum center that had a special Auschwitz exhibit and go through a Holocaust museum in Cincinnati one day. And they were able to go to a local town, Madison, Indiana, that has a lot of history within an hour drive with the Underground Railroad and things of that nature. And we put together an entire day just visiting a local town and learning the history and how that ties into Indiana as well. So they're doing things of that nature. And then seniors is focused on work-based learning. We use these Mondays as well. That is where our internship program happens. That has been fantastic in and of itself, not to get too deep with as big as your question was and everything you want to discuss in that, but it used to be our internship program. They just went during the first two class periods, Monday through Friday. So they had about an hour and a half to be on site somewhere, but it was tied into having to be from like 8 to 9:30 every morning. With it now on Mondays, the flexibility is open. We're pushing them to meet our state requirements. They need to be on site a minimum of 4 hours, but it can be flexible. We try to push 5 or 6. The more, the better. And it has opened up a lot more opportunities. When it was just an hour and a half, they had to be back at school. They could only be at local businesses. Now we have Cincinnati and Indianapolis both within an hour drive of us, and we've had students that are going to those places and getting much bigger experiences than small town Indiana to be able to explore different careers. And that has been fantastic in and of its own. So I guess that's kind of a basic nutshell for kind of what our Mondays look like. I'm trying to think what else you asked about. I mean, some of the issues that we would run into, more of just small logistical stuff were kind of the hiccups. It was, okay, we're planning for this guest speaker to be in working with our sophomores for 2 hours. An hour and 15, 20 minutes go by and our guest speaker is done. Now we've got 30 to 40 minutes to fill before the next activity is ready for them. So it's trying to be intent on how can we fill those with still educational opportunities, not just giving them free time to sit around for half an hour, but what kind of stuff can we have kind of backups to fill in those times? And so that, what I'd say, was one of the bigger hiccups that we have worked with. And then too, just, I feel like overall, I mean, staff, parents have told us communication has been great, but I feel like communication can always be better. That's one, in some of our feedback, we get some of the families like it seemed like our kid was just always going and doing different service activities. They didn't really get to experience the other things. And it's like, okay, so our families really aren't honed in on knowing that we have different themes for each grade level and kind of being able to communicate that better and do some of that better as well. So that's overall, the big picture has been great. I mean, that's of our families and of our staff, even of the students, that's over 90%. When we did surveys both at midterm around the end of first semester, and then we did surveys at the end of the school year. and over 90% have been overwhelmingly positive. And that's very few have been negative, or that's, and even the ones that are negative, it's more just constructive stuff on things that say, hey, maybe try this to make it better or do something a little different. But it has been great overall.
I love hearing about this because I mean, I don't know of many schools that are or have just taken a day of the week and said, you don't have normal classes. Like it, we have different experiences. We have different experiences for each grade level and the theme, and there's so much intentionality about it. But like so many people, they would love to do something like this, but like worry about pushback. So I'm curious, like what's something that has surprised you the most during year one of Mission Mondays and this work?
I'd say the biggest surprise for me has been from the student side of things through their feedback. A couple things that popped out that didn't really occur to me or I think about is just as adults kind of go through the Sunday crazies of getting ready for their work week and things like that, is the same thing with students. That's students, a lot of them talked about, they loved that Monday kind of gets the week started on a different note. And it really, if they did have like schoolwork to do, essentially they now have a 3-day weekend to work on it instead of just the 2. So it has really made that kind of lower their stress levels and even anxiety levels with getting back to school, getting into their week and things like that. So that's something that didn't really cross my mind, that I loved seeing multiple times students saying that. It wasn't just a one student mentioning that. So that was something that had popped out to me. Also, with our Mission Mondays, one of the things that I didn't mention before, but we try to set it up that most Mondays our students are done with their experiences by 1 o'clock. From 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. We try to have our teachers available, and those are kind of like our open office hours. So that's when we do, like, if there's extracurricular clubs, things like that, they'll do club meetings during that time. If there's upcoming tests, that's teachers may host like a study session, something of that nature, or just if students are struggling, need some extra help, they can come in on their own, get that help during that time. I was a little iffy on seeing, because that's some thought is a student thinks school day ends at 1 p.m. I'm out of here. But that's one of the requests actually at the end. Some of the feedback was they wish some of the teachers that were chaperoning field trips were actually on campus more often during that 1 to 3 time, because they were gone with the field trip and weren't available on a particular Monday. So that's something that we're looking at for the future. But there was a lot of students that talked about, especially our seniors. We do exit interviews with them as a school before they graduate. And that's a majority of them, when talking about their thoughts on their experience of Mission Monday, said they loved having that 1 to 3 p.m. time to be able to come in and talk with teachers and get that extra help. And that was something we wanted to be able to provide. We're trying to set our kids up for college and feel like open office hours. That's kind of a college type of thing, see how it fits in. And it has went very well. That's even parents have said that they'd noticed their kids take advantage of it. And glad that we offered that. We need to be sure we keep that in as we move forward.
We just want to pause right here and share a little bit more about UScience.
Well, instead of us actually talking about it, Alli, why don't we just roll clips of guests speaking about it? Sound good?
That was awesome.
All right, let's roll these.
We really had to say that was where we brought in UScience, intentional planning, so that no matter who they spoke with, whether it be their counselor, whether it be one of our CTE coordinators, whether it be one of our programs that were coming in to help, that they were the ones saying, hey, this is what I see myself. This is what I'm good at. These are my strengths. This is how you can help me. Our student outcomes started to change where we never guessed they would. Our failure rates went down.
So when I ran into UScience and kind of started digging into the evidence-based research that both the interest and aptitude side of UScience sits on, I thought, this is it. This is how we make college not a very expensive career exploration for students. This is how we get kids in the right field.
What about someone who's an engineer and they say, but I really don't want to go to college. Well, UScience can do that little subtle shift away from engineering and just say, well, what about mechatronics and PLC technicians? So it allows you to pinpoint where a student may feel comfortable, and you're not just guessing.
Well, there you have it, Allie. This is what people on our podcast say. We don't need to say it again and again.
Everybody who brings up youth science, even the messages and the conversations we have outside of the podcast, they all go back to everything you just heard and more.
Exactly. Hit up uscience.com/disrupt education -podcast. Basically, you'll see how UScience Brightpath uses data, aptitude, insights, and real-world connections to close the career exposure gap. Just request a demo there. Tell them you heard about them on Disrupt Education Podcast. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Reach out today. I love this because there's clarity here. There's just different. I like the different levels of this. I love the mess of this because there are. And I know Allie and I will probably talk a little bit about this next week, but like. It's really about trying something and moving forward and learning. So it's not just the students I'm hearing that are just learning here. It's a lot. It's the community. It's the parents. It's the educators. It's everybody learning, and that's okay. There's not perfection here, and there shouldn't be perfection. And I really like that. You had a rigorous work-based learning program as we were talking last at the beginning of this whole thing. I kind of want to, I'm the internship coordinator at my school, so I geek out a little bit on that senior year, that work-based learning, and kind of want to focus in on that. So let's look at the work-based learning component, and we can go back into, the history components and the arts components and the service components of other grade levels. So you have seniors, and they've probably seen this. They've been through your school for 4 years or however long that they're going through. Is it a K through 12 or is it a high school?
Just 9 through 12.
9 through 12. Sorry. So they've been there for 4 years. They got this opportunity as their seniors. Talk about like what. So it seems like they've given you good feedback of wanting more conversation with educators, and also I heard you say in there is more opportunities that are getting it and opening up, especially on the internship program. When did you realize, hey, wait a minute, this on the senior part, this is really working, the internship component in the work-based learning?
So I'd say that kind of came together. So it's with our internship program. It still runs pretty similarly from my end as in the past. I meet with each student when they're a junior at the end of their junior year, and we discuss kind of what their potential career aspirations are or what areas they want to explore for an internship. I work with them on brainstorming different places to go, tell them to go talk to their parents to think about things. But that's when we had those conversations, that's when I really felt like with this senior class that just graduated that this was going to work well, because we were then able to start talking about, like, as I remember one specific senior, she wanted to be in a science lab. Batesville, Indiana, Oldenburg, Indiana does not have a science lab. That's within 20 minutes, 30 minutes. There is not a science lab. However, she was able to connect with a professor at the University of Cincinnati and be able to go to Cincinnati and be a part of their lab work and be introduced to that and go through that. So that's kind of once she did that, I was like, okay, this is really going to open up some doors for these students. This is going to create some pretty meaningful experiences, because that's in the past, we would always have a couple kids that it's like, well, I really want to do this, but I know that's not local, so I guess I'll have to settle for something different. And I don't think we'll really have that anymore. We'll be able to get past that. So I think that is a big thing with that. And also just thinking of work-based learning on our Mondays, even another new program this year that we did that I set up was called a fellowship program for our juniors. And that's with our juniors to get them a little bit of work-based learning experience. They got put into small groups, typically 5 to 7 kids in a group. And they had 7 different weeks during the spring semester on Mondays that they rotated through different career sets. So like one week they went to our local community foundation and learned about nonprofits, and so they got to do a hands-on activity that nonprofit set up. Another week they went to the hospital, took a tour of the hospital, learned about different careers, even outside of healthcare, that you could have working at a hospital. They went to a local manufacturing facility, learned about engineering, assembly, all kinds of different careers, and took a tour of that facility. We set it up with our local state congressperson as well, that each student participated in the PAGE program that our state house offers. So that's at one Monday they were going to Indianapolis, and they spent the day shadowing a state senator and working with them and kind of learning about the politics of things and how our state government works. And we also had it's New Horizons is the name of it. It is a rehab facility that works with people with physical and mental disabilities and trying to help them participate in the workforce and just progress. And they got to go work with them one day and have some fun with them. And by far that program, I guess, when talking about some unexpected positives, that went way above and beyond my expectations. I was concerned just with setting this up. I was like, man, I hope these organizations will be good with this, and this will be something that continue year after year. And we hosted a little luncheon at the end of the year that we invited them in, and we had some of our students speak to them about their experiences. And all of the organizations said they absolutely loved this. They loved having the students, loved being able to share that information, and they all put together fantastic programs for the students to do. They were on site for 2 to 3 hours, except the state house was an all-day thing, but all the other ones were 2 to 3 hours. And that was another one that I have had this year already currently working on setting up my senior interns for next school year. There's a handful of them that are wanting to go to these places that they learned about that they didn't know of or didn't think of different career opportunities within those facilities because of the fellowship program.
I wish I had that experience. I'm just listening to this. I'm just like, this is so great for kids. So great for kids. All of this is so great for kids. I still remember when we had you on the podcast the first time, all the different hats that you wore as a teacher and work-based learning coordinator, and you were like running a bunch of clubs and everything. It sounds like you're still doing various hats, but not teaching as well. Is that right?
Actually, I do still teach. I'm teaching a dual credit political science class, a dual credit psychology class, and economics.
Well,
So
okay.
I don't teach as much. I don't have as many classes as I did before, but I have 3 classes a day that I teach. So about half the day's teaching and half the day I'm able to work on this other stuff.
Just doing everything, Jason. So so you've done it now for a year, right? And I know the first year, that's what I was kind of getting at with my chickens. The first year is just, it's so much creating, it's so much new stuff that, like, and you're really just seeing like what works, what didn't work. And then like the second year is more like editing, adjusting, modifying, but you're not starting from scratch. So I'm just what are you like most looking forward to this next year? Still with all the hats that you wear, but that, like came out of this first year that you're really excited about for 2026, 2027 school year.
I mean, I would say me personally, I am looking forward to our Mondays just being much smoother on my end. Like this past year when they went on field trips, did those experiences, there are some that I wish I would have been able to be a chaperone for, but I felt like I need to stay at school. I need to make sure all the other grades are doing their transitions and not running into issues and just kind of be there for that. As we have kind of learned and developed over the year, I think we've got a plan in place that is really going to help just our Mondays run smoother, be a much more well-oiled machine going forward. So I'm personally I'm excited for that because I think it'll open up my time to where maybe I will be able to go chaperone some of these neat trips the kids are doing and things of that nature. But from a overall program perspective and from maybe more of a student perspective, like that's, I know students, there were certain ones that from different grade levels that were excited. Like that's our juniors going to Madison. I know our sophomore class is already excited because they heard those kids last year talking about their experience there and how fun it was. And so it was neat to hear that as this school was winding down, kids talking about as they're getting ready to transition to their junior year, oh yeah, we'll get to do that on Monday now and we'll get to experience that. So hearing them talk about the positive experiences that I know we're going to be re-implementing, and just that the students now have a year under their belt as well and have a feeling, because they really didn't know what they were getting into. They didn't really understand exactly what Mission Monday was going to look like and what it entailed. So now that they've been through it for a year, I think it even has them more excited about what it looks like moving forward and what they're going to get to be a part of. And that excites me.
Exactly. This is something that I would totally want to be a part of. I mean, I think you're building the human skills here, and I think that's to me is something that's so I think a lot of us are just wanting more and more of. And that's kind of where I wanted to take this next question. You have students in high school. A lot of people, again, I'm going to go back to the technology and AI and all this stuff, where a lot of people are now questioning how much ed tech do we need, how much laptop or screen time do we need, and things like that. And your experiences with these students, you're obviously having a lot of observations and conversations with hearing students say, "Hey, next year I get to do this," and also I'm now reaching out and talking to and experiencing with professionals. What what kind of stories do you have where students might have been, just kind of over here in the screen, and then now are they learning their conversation, their communication points? Have you seen any of that?
Definitely. Yes. I mean, that's so I'll say as their senior part of their internship program, at the end, they have to do a formal dress up in formal business attire and they give a presentation over it. We invite the people that they interned for, anybody from that facility can come in and view those presentations. And the feedback we get from those, just watching the presentations, they talk about how well OA students are at presenting and communicating and going through that. And like they're just blown away by just kind of the etiquette and communication styles that our students have. So I'd say that's a direct feedback that we have received that would tie into that. I'd also say too, that's I know from our senior exit interviews, some of the information we received is seniors talked about that like they have noticed they're using like they don't have the desire to want to be on their phones as much, like especially during school hours. I mean, that used to be something that was a major problem, kids getting their phones out whenever they had free time. They're now socializing more. They're now talking with each other. They're talking with their teachers and things of that nature. So I'd say that's kind of something that's come from it. We have also, to try to help push that, we have set up some of our guest speakers that we bring in and things that we do. That's our entire junior class goes through what's called the Rise Leadership Program. A local organization puts it on. It's a very neat experience. They get to spend a day in kind of a conference-like setting, and they learn different leadership skills and go through activities to do those. And so that's something that has helped that we do on this Monday. And then too, just some of our guest speakers. We've brought speakers in to work with kids on how to properly interview, write resumes, and do things of that nature. We've also had some that just will come in, whether we've had some virtual guests that have talked to students about creativity skills and being able to stay creative as they're spending more time on devices and things of that nature. And I think all of those little things put together that are happening on these Mondays are definitely helping. And I'll be more curious to see kind of our freshman class that was this past year, since I'll see what they have to say when they're seniors doing this Mission Monday for 4 years.
I think about with skydiving, there's all this fear and build up before the jump, and the confidence doesn't really come from like sitting thinking about skydiving or sitting and thinking about education or like what I could do, or it's like the actual experience which you're providing through Mission Mondays. And I mean, like, I'm just thinking about that RISE program or the 7 weeks you did with the juniors to like prepare them for what they're going to do for work-based learning. There's so much intentionality there, and there's just so much discovery and excitement in all of the levels. I knew it was going to be awesome when we heard about it. So it's like, it's just so awesome to like, you've done a full school year and just to kind of hear about it. So this is just more of like, your take on education in terms of, you've been in it for a long time. You also have had a really interesting career path getting there. And if our listeners are like, "Oh, I didn't catch Jason's first episode," like, we'll link it. It's a really great episode. So I'm just curious, in all your time in education and the work that you've done, like, do you think we are now currently like overvaluing information and maybe undervaluing experiences in education?
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And I think that is also one of the big reasons our school has kind of pushed these Mission Mondays is we want to be more experiential. As it's been discussed, less time on devices, more time out there actually doing. And that's even though we have these overarching themes on our Mondays for the grade levels, we do also still sprinkle in other things that maybe don't tie directly into that theme, but are just going to be great for them. Like, for example, we had a life skills camp for one of our grade levels one week where we brought three different people in. One of them was a automotive center, and they just taught them like the basics of changing tires and the type of stuff you should be doing for preventative maintenance as these kids are getting ready to get their licenses. That's when then a different rotation, they went and talked to a banking facility and just learned about savings accounts, checking accounts, the differences between them and how to properly utilize them and how debit cards work and things like that. And then a third one was an investment firm. They came in and started talking to them about essentially you're never too young to start saving. That's utilize your parents to help start investing money, and there's all kinds of different options in investing that you can set yourself up for financial success as soon as you get out of high school, and kind of introducing those concepts to them as well. So while that may not fit the fine arts theme of our freshmen, it was still something very valuable for them to learn. And so that's what we're always doing, different things like that as well. That's one of our favorite days. We've always done a career day for alumni that we invite alumni to come back in, and students will go into different classrooms and listen to alumni talk about their careers. And in the past, again, it was something we only had a couple hours because students still needed to go to their classes. It was something that disrupted our schedule and shortened class periods for the day. This year, we moved all of that onto a Monday. We were then able to, instead of just an individual alumni talking for a half an hour and then moving on to the next one, we more so created panels. We had different panels, like a healthcare panel. We had 4 or 5 alumni that had different careers within healthcare. And students spent an hour listening to a moderated conversation with them. And then you had like a financial panel, and we just had different panels. And then it ended with a all school luncheon with those alumni to where students could personally go up to them, talk to them, ask more questions, make it more meaningful. That turned into a fantastic day as well. The alumni loved it that came back. The students loved it because most alumni are the younger alumni, so they felt like they could connect pretty easily to them and see themselves going in that direction. And so that was another great experience that maybe for our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors didn't tie in exactly to their theme, but was something that was definitely great for them to go through.
I'm taking a bunch of notes, by the way, and I hope to implement some of this where I work. This is amazing stuff, Jason. One of the questions I want to ask is on the curriculum side, right? So you have all these experiences, and again, this is the first year Have you seen this bleed into some of the curriculum, like those 4 days where you have coursework? Does it interact with that? What does that look like? And now and or in the future, do you see that like kind of coming into, hey, we went to obviously in a historical sense in a history course that will probably play in very well. But how about those you mentioned? Yeah, I don't know how much this comes into the arts, but yeah, what does that look like now and in the future?
That is part of our learning experience from year one, because that's a lot of the stuff we did after talking to teachers. They did tie into stuff that the teachers taught, but maybe just not during that time frame. So that's one of our changes moving forward is we want to try to align those so that they're doing those experiences during a similar time frame that they're going to be covering that information in their classes, because it'll feel like it'll make more meaningful conversation in the classroom then when they're in the classroom. So that was one of our learning experiences from it for this year. But that's also on top of that, we've been able to, with our state requirements, new diploma that is being released coming up in the next couple of years, but schools are starting to get on board and get in line with what these new requirements are. Like that's one of them is a computers class that it's just a 1 credit hour class that's we've been able to manage. We worked that in with our freshmen and sophomores this year that on Mondays we were able to use a guest that came in that has a career with the computers that met the standards there, that he came in and did a couple presentations. He had the kids doing hands-on stuff and we're able to accumulate enough hours that we could give them that credit through these Mondays. So that's by having guests in and things like that. And that's we're going to kind of do the same thing moving forward with a financial literacy class. That's a 1 hour thing. We're going to be able to utilize guest experts and things like that to be able to hit what we need to on those standards and provide a credit for that as well.
This is the closest model that I can think of when I think of disrupting education that is like live. It's only year one.
Yeah.
I know anyone listening to this podcast is going to be like really encouraged just to hear. There's so many things you've talked about. I don't want people to be like overwhelmed because you can build it in. You can start small, right? Like you say like, oh, we're only 150 students. Like, well, you're planning activities for 150 students every Monday on top of teaching
Yeah.
and like your normal like week. So it's definitely a lot. That's I think of the years that I had close to 150 students, and you're right, managing them every single day is a lot. And so you're still doing that, and providing unique experiences for that is incredible. And I know you've highlighted a ton of what you've done, and I'm sure it's not everything because there's like 30 Mondays in a school year. So we have not gone through all of the 100+ experiences that they've done. Okay, pivoting a little bit, our podcast theme for this year is bold. Your work is bold for sure. And kind of like to encourage our listeners, because it's not everyone's like ready for this, but like, what is something schools and educators and students should know about this work, and something they know they should be doing in education, but maybe are like afraid to try? So curious on your take, because you have pushed through probably a lot of pushback and naysayers and everything, and you've gotten to the other side. So what would you say that could encourage our listeners that might be thinking about trying to do this work?
I mean, I would say, as you kind of mentioned, be willing to start small. I mean, that's with us as a school, even though we rolled out this big program, I think part of its success came from doing small things before, even when we were in our traditional school setting. That's just realizing and noticing that, like in some of the business classes that I previously taught, that I had brought in a virtual guest out of the Netherlands that talked to my students virtually one day just by being willing to reach out and talk to them. That's I made connections within our local community just by reaching out to them to bring them in as guests to talk to my seniors about financial planning and learning about different investments and hearing it from them as opposed to just a teacher lecturing out of the information that's in the textbook. And I think doing those small things, and we have a great staff that most staff members were doing those small things, that kind of started leading into, okay, these are the parts that the kids are enjoying out of the classes. This is what's memorable. This is also what is causing the disruptions and what's causing our instructional time to get hit with different things because they're doing these things. What's a step we can take? And so it was kind of just the admin seeing that and being supportive to let's see what we can do to make this happen. And I think right now is a great time to be doing this type of stuff as well, just with where we are when you think of AI technology. I mean, it's the state of Indiana just rolled out that starting next school year, that's in all schools, phones aren't allowed to be out. That students from the first bell to the last bell, they have to be put away somewhere. They can't be turned on. And that's like now considered a state law that is being pushed through. So I think there is definitely this kind of, we're maybe at the top of that hill of, okay, now would be a good time. Let's start pushing away from that stuff and looking at doing these different experiential learning themes and ideas. That's when looking at employers, they're all talking about, we need more people that have these different soft skill sets that are able to communicate, that are able to listen and learn and jump in and do stuff, be willing to try new things. And you need to work on that when they're students. You can instill that when they're students. And by doing that, you're preparing them better for their future. So it's just that willingness to kind of make that jump in and start doing small things and build yourself up.
Overall, Mission Mondays, what has it taught you about the difference between school and education?
Great question. So I would say it has taught me the difference in that watching the Mission Mondays come to life, I have seen students come to life. That's in your traditional school setting, you hear a lot of negativity. I can't wait till the school year's over. Can't wait to get out of this building and just things like that. With the Mission Mondays and what they're doing there, that culture with the students has completely changed. Our seniors yeah, you do still have some that hit the senioritis, but there was a lot of our seniors that talked about, I'm really going to miss this. I really miss what we did this year. I miss the way that one thing, I guess, going back, another thing that hit me, that kind of a thing I didn't expect, our grade levels, since each Monday they're doing stuff together, it really built a sense of family among their grade level, among their peers. And so that's, being a small school probably helps with it, but you didn't really have the cliques because of that. You really didn't have those different small groups. They all got along with each other, and that rolled over into Tuesday through Friday too in the classroom. It's no longer when you're putting kids into groups, it's like a small, quick friend group. They could be with anybody and they'll get along with anybody and do well with anybody. And that is something that I did notice this year different from years past as well. And I think that is education over just schooling. And that is more what it is about. That's preparing them to help them become a better person as they leave high school.
That's the best answer. I love that so much. I totally meant to ask this earlier, and from the educator's perspective, you're a little more global in this with planning everything, but what do you think teachers learned from Mission Mondays and educators, and maybe they weren't expecting or was surprising going through this year? What's kind of some of the feedback from the educator and admin perspective?
I will say early on, as the school year got started and we got these Mondays going, my biggest concern were fellow educators, because it became another ask of them. It was, hey, can you guys chaperone this trip and be gone all day by being a chaperone? Or it's, hey, can you supervise these kids as they're going through a rotation? Or we even had sometimes teachers that we thought, you know what, they've got this skill set that they're maybe not using in the classroom, but good for kids to know. So we're asking teachers if they're willing to kind of put together their own little activity or something that falls in line with that. And so that's, to me, it's just, okay, I feel bad asking educators for one more thing, like to do that. And so that was definitely kind of nerve-wracking on me at the beginning of the year. But as we went in, like just after the first month at a faculty meeting, we talked about how the first month went as a educator, being a part of it. Again, I was completely blown by how positive they all were. They were all excited about what they were doing. They were excited along the same lines with having that Monday as well. It's like I now have an extra essential planning day for the week, and it actually opens up more time to prepare for the rest of the week, even if I am going on a field trip or whatnot. Just having that extra day before the school week starts has been a great help, and that stayed true all throughout the year. That's at the end of the school year, it was the same thing. So to really see that buy-in from the faculty, and after they were doing some of the different experiences, even just supervising kids, like going through the life skills camp, they were like, kind of, I think what you mentioned earlier, Allie. It was like, man, I wish I had that when I was a kid. Like I wish I could have went through that. These are such great experiences. I love being a part of it. They loved being able to kind of meet some of the other adults that are leading these things, and it just opens up their own networking as well. So I mean, it blew me away on that end too, that they enjoyed it and were bought into it and did whatever we asked of them through the whole process. And so that it was fantastic to see that as well.
I would love this as an educator. I'm sure we'll unpack that a little bit more. But again, like just as a lifelong learner and being out there and learning and evolving with your community, with your students, with your peers as educators, I just see this as a win-win-win. I mean, and I'm super excited to see, into the next year. Allie, I think we're going to have Jason on next year at the end, and we'll just keep kind of coming. We would love, I think, to have maybe some of your students come on as well, alum or whatnot. I can tell you that I just took about 3 pages of notes. Take a lot of this back to our decision makers. I think it comes back to that one question of, 20 years from now, what are students going to remember more? Are they going to remember the classes they took, or the the second test, or experiences that changed them? And I think we know the answer here, Jason. And truly, as a our theme this year is being bold. And I would put you up there in the top 3 of being very bold, with an esteemed crew of some people we've had on the podcast of really making this change, taking a look at, hey, all right, the butts and seat model, the traditional model, and let's shift it a little bit and take these. So what is ahead for the next year? What is maybe 1 or 2 things for the next year that you're like, hey, I can see us, going this direction with it? And obviously we want people to know how to connect with you, because I think you're going to have some people reaching out.
Yeah, looking ahead for our future with it. I'm looking forward to. That's just, now that I've gone through it a year, the intentionality of things is going to be sharpened up a little bit. And then 2, like that's some of the stuff that hit me this past year was, as we're planning things and thinking of the little things, because typically it's multiple activities. Unless they're on a field trip, they're usually doing 2 or 3 different things throughout the day. So it's scheduling all those different things that they're doing and figuring that out. And a lot of times my goal was always to send an email out to staff on Thursday or Friday before that Monday of, here's exactly what the day looks like. My goal next year is I want to now be able to be like multiple weeks in advance, and just that way, so teachers, students, they kind of know what's coming up. Parents talked about that, like typically, and it was kind of part of our request too. Try to do your college visit days or doctor's appointments. If you need to do those on Mondays. Well, parents got to the point that it's like, we're fine doing these on Mondays, but we want to know what's going on Mondays, because there's certain Mondays that we want to make sure our students don't miss with the activities that are planned and going on. So we want to be sure we hit that. And so they're asking to be able to see a little bit more information up front. And with having a year behind us, I see that happening pretty easily. And that actually excites me a little bit because it's going to make my job a lot easier. I'm not going to be scrambling those last few days before the weekend of, oh gosh, I need to fill this. And what are these kids going to be doing during this time frame? I've got something to play off of. So I'm just excited to be able to have that year behind me and be able to use that to springboard me moving forward. As far as connecting with me, I would say through LinkedIn is the best. You can just find me under Jason Walke on LinkedIn, and I am happy to connect. That's also email. You can email me anytime. Phone is always in my pocket. I do real estate on the side, so I'm always checking my notifications. So the JWALKE at oldenburgacademy.org is my email address. So I'm happy to connect, share ideas, or just connect for networking purposes as well.
Love it. Love it. Oh, thank you so much for sharing the year. I'm going to encourage, and I know, Alli, you kind of said this before, but if you haven't heard the before episode of this, I mean, you can get a whole year. It's like, whole year in 2 episodes here. And it's very exciting to see that. But thank you, Jason, for coming back to the Disrupt Education podcast. I'm going to guess you're going to be back again, even with more amazing things. I know, like I said, I've taken a bunch of notes. There are small things that people can start in here. There are continuing things that people can start in here. And you've really reminded us of taking risks, being uncomfortable, trying things, and learning is really where all that happens. It's not perfection every day in a classroom. It's a yes and. So I want to thank you so much for hanging out with us today and taking time out of your day.
I appreciate it. That's always love talking with you guys, and look forward to seeing what you guys are doing as well through LinkedIn, and happy to come back on at any time.
Absolutely. For Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Don't forget to head over to disrupteducationpodcast.com. If you're seeing this on your Spotify, Apple, your YouTube, guess what? It's kind of saying you probably should be listening to more if you're not subscribed. So hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next week when we unpack this episode. Can't wait to talk to Alli more about this as well. We'll talk to you. Thank you for being a listener and a watcher of Disrupt Education Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Disrupt Education Podcast. If this episode sparked an idea, challenged your thinking, or helped you see education differently, well, that's exactly why we're here. We're highlighting real stories and bold ideas shaping the future of learning. A quick thank you to our sponsor, UScience BrightPath, the next generation platform helping students make personalized decisions as they move from education to career. If you're serious about connecting students to real opportunity, head to uscience.com/disrupteducation-podcast. Request a demo and let them know you heard about UScience right here on the Disrupt Education Podcast. For more episodes and clips and ways to connect, you can always visit disrupteducationpodcast.com. I'm Peter Hostrawser. Keep disrupting. We'll see you next time on the podcast.